Retirees who stay confident during market downturns often aren't the ones with the largest portfolios. Instead, they're the ones who made decisions ahead of time about what steps to take. Let me ask you a question. What would you actually do if the market dropped by 25% during your first year of retirement? If you don't have a clear answer, you're not alone. Most pre-retirees I work with don't. Most people just have a general idea. We'll cut back. We'll write it out. We'll figure it out when we get there. When a real downturn happens, just having a vague idea isn't the same as having a plan. If your plan isn't clear, it often leads to panic phone calls when the market drops. If you saw our recent video about the 5 behaviors that set confident retirees apart from the anxious ones, the third behavior was deciding in advance how you will respond to a market downturn. That video explained why this matters. Today, I'll guide you through this process step by step. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear framework to use. You'll learn about 4 key decision points, the main framework that brings it all together, and the document that ties everything up. If we haven't met before, my name is Snook Jin. I'm a certified financial planner. I lead a team of advisors who serve pre-retirees and business owners across the country. Today, I want to walk you through what I call a downturn playbook. This exercise is free. It takes just one afternoon of focused thought with your spouse and could help your retirement recover from a downturn instead of struggle. Let's get started. This exercise is based on a simple truth. It's much easier to make decisions before things get stressful than when you're facing a crisis. Right now, you can sit down with your spouse and a cup of coffee at the kitchen table. You can talk through different scenarios at your own pace. You can think clearly about how you would handle a downturn. But if the market drops by 25%, it won't be so easy to think clearly. The news will be overwhelming. You'll see your portfolio shrinking on the screen. Your spouse might be feeling anxious. You probably won't be in the best position to make a good financial decision. That's why the downturn playbook helps you make these decisions while things are still steady. So you won't have to figure them out when things get stressful. Before we get into this framework, let me show you what history shows about the market downturns. Over the past 50 years, there have been multiple significant declines in the US stock market. The mid-1970s, the early 2000s during the dot-com era, financial crisis of 2008, the pandemic-related decline in 2020, and the inflation-driven decline in 2022. On average, that means there's about one major drop every decade. A typical 25 to 30-year retirement is likely to experience 2, 3, or more such periods. Nobody knows when the next decline will arrive. Nobody knows how deep it will be. Nobody knows how long it will last. History shows it will likely happen at some point during your retirement. The question isn't whether you'll face a downturn. The question is whether you'll be ready when it arrives. So, are you ready? What helps you get through a downturn is having your plan written down. To make this concrete, let me walk you through a hypothetical couple. I'll call them Robert and Linda. They're both 64. They retired last year. They have a $1.2 million portfolio, and their essential monthly expenses are about $6,500. We'll follow through Linda through each trigger level of the playbook so you can see how the framework applies to a real situation. Let's start with the first trigger. For Robert and Linda, that's a 15% drop. At this point, they don't take any action. The portfolio is built to absorb a 15% drop. Diversified portfolios have historically recovered from drops of this size within 6 to 18 months. This is not a guarantee, but it's what history has shown up to now. Now, 15% is where I typically start with clients like Robert and Linda. Your first trigger might be different. Maybe yours is 10%. Maybe it's 20%. The exact number matters less than deciding on it before a drop happens. The temptation at your first trigger will be to do something. You're going to want to rebalance. You're going to want to shift to cash. You're going to want to call your advisor and demand action. Try to resist the temptation. In this case, doing nothing is the right move. Staying disciplined at the first trigger lets your portfolio do its job. If you react every time your portfolio drops a little, you can turn temporary declines into a permanent losses. Your pre-decided response is to make no changes. Making no changes isn't exciting, but every other option could be riskier. Getting through the first trigger without taking action is usually the easy part. The second trigger for Robert and Linda is a 25% drop. At this level, they take one specific action. They pause or reduce discretionary spending. The big trip they were planning may have to wait a year. The kitchen renovation gets postponed. Instead of a new car, a decent used one may have to be good enough. Same idea applies to the number here. 25% is what I use for this trigger. Your number might be 20 or 30%. The specific number isn't what's most important. What matters is the specific action you take. At this point, they don't reduce essential spending. They still pay their mortgage, they still buy groceries, they still pay for healthcare. What they do is stop adding new discretionary expenses. There's a mathematical reason for this. At this level of drop, every dollar you withdraw from your portfolios is being withdrawn when prices are low. You are effectively selling your investments at a discount. For essential expenses, you have no choice. For discretionary expenses, you do have a choice. When you pause discretionary spending, you take some pressure off your portfolio. You give it room to recover. You don't lock in losses on the parts of your spending that could wait. Pausing discretionary spending gives your portfolio extra time to recover. But if the market keeps dropping, you need a different move. This is where the most important part of your playbook comes in. A quick note before we continue. Everything I'm walking you through today is meant to help you build your own playbook. To make that easier, I put together a free 3-page worksheet you can download. It includes the framework we're building, plus a fillable worksheet where you can capture your own trigger levels, your cash reserve amount, and both of your signatures. Grab it now and you can start filling it in as we go through the rest of the video. The link is in the description below. Now let's keep going. The third trigger for Robert and Linda is 35% drop. This is where their plan changes meaningfully. At a 35% drop, they stop drawing from their portfolios for essential expenses. Instead, they tap their cash reserve. Same idea here on the number. 35% is what I use for this level. Your number might be 30% or 40%. The specific number depends on your situation, but the action is the same. When you hit your third trigger, you stop drawing from your portfolio and start drawing from your cash reserve. This brings us to the most important part of your playbook. Let me explain what your cash reserve is and why it matters so much. Your cash reserve is money you set aside in advance in a separate account specifically to bridge a deep downturn. It's not your emergency fund. It's not your checking account. It's dedicated, reserved just for this purpose. How much should it be? A common starting point is 12 to 24 months of your essential spending. For Robert and Linda, with essential expenses of $6,500 a month, that means somewhere between $78,000 and $156,000 sitting in a separate account or part of their portfolio. The exact amount depends on your comfort level, your other income sources, and how conservative you want to be. Where does it live? Somewhere safe and accessible. High-yield savings accounts, money market accounts, or short-term treasury bills are common choices. The key is that your cash reserve doesn't move with the stock market. When the market drops, your cash reserve stays put. That's the main point. When does it get used? At the third trigger, not before. At the first or second trigger, your cash reserve sits untouched. It's there for one specific purpose, and you don't touch it for anything else. Your cash reserve lets you avoid selling investments when prices are low. It gives your portfolio time to recover without forcing you to fund withdrawals when prices are down. And when the market does recover, you refill the cash reserve from your portfolio over the following years. Building your cash reserve before you retire is one of the best things you can do. It's what makes the rest of your playbook work. The cash reserve buys Robert and Linda time to recover, but even a cash reserve has its limits. That's where the fourth trigger comes in. The fourth trigger is your absolute floor. This is the level at which you accept that your original plan is no longer working. You make a meaningful change to your lifestyle. This is the hardest trigger to decide on emotionally, but it's also the most important. For Robert and Linda, their absolute floor might be a 50% drop that lasts more than 2 years. Or it might be a smaller drop combined with another problem, like a major health event that costs more than expected. The specific trigger is less important than having one. What does an absolute floor response look like? It depends on your situation. For some people, it means selling the larger home and moving into a smaller one. For others, it means moving to a lower cost of living area. For others, it means taking on a part-time work. For others, it means asking adult children for short-term support. None of these options are easy to think about ahead of time. That's exactly why you should decide on them ahead of time. Most retirees never reach the absolute floor. The cash reserve and the discretionary spending pauses are usually enough. But deciding your absolute floor ahead of time removes the worst kind of fear. The fear of not knowing what you would do if things really did get bad. Once you know what you would do, that fear gets much smaller. You may never need to execute the absolute floor plan, but just knowing you have a plan makes a difference. Now let's talk about the actual document. Your downturn playbook needs to be in writing. Just talking about it isn't enough. A vague understanding between you and your spouse isn't enough either. You need a document you can actually hold in your hands or access easily. Why? During a downturn, memory becomes unreliable. You and your spouse may remember the same conversation differently. You may forget specific details about the trigger levels. You may not agree when you need it most. Writing it down clears up all that confusion. What goes in the document? Each of the 4 trigger levels, the specific percentage you chose for each, the specific action you will take at each. For your cash reserve, the amount you have set aside, where it lives, the date the playbook was written, both of your signatures. The signatures matter, not for legal reasons, but for psychological ones. When you both sign the document, it creates a commitment that verbal agreement can't match. Once your playbook is written, store it where both of you can find it. A binder with your other financial document works. A shared digital folder works. Tell each other where it is. And revisit your playbook once a year or every other year. Not because it needs to change often, but reviewing it helps you both stay familiar with your plan. Before we wrap up, let me name the mistakes I see most often. There are 6 of them. First, having a vague sense instead of written triggers. You might think you have a plan because you thought about it, but just thinking about it isn't the same as making a decision. And making a decision isn't the same as writing it down. If your downturn plan is only in your head, it won't help you when you need it most. Second, failing to build your cash reserve in advance. Your cash reserve has to exist before the downturn. Trying to build a cash reserve during a down market means selling investments at lower prices. That's exactly what your cash reserve is there to prevent. Build it before you retire, or in the first year of retirement at the latest. Third, pulling the trigger at the wrong time. Some people panic at a 5% or 10% drop and act as if we're a 25% drop. Others refuse to act on their third trigger because they hope the market will recover quickly. The triggers are there so you don't have to make tough decisions in the moment. Follow them. Fourth, not involving your spouse in the playbook. This is the most common mistake I see. Sometimes one spouse builds the playbook alone, thinking they'll use it during a downturn. But during a downturn, both of you are making decisions together. If only one of you writes the playbook, the other is left out. Both of you need to be part of writing it. Both need to sign it. Both need to know where it is. Fifth, treating the playbook as something you set and forget. Your playbook should be reviewed at least once a year. Things change. Your essential spending changes. Your cash reserve needs may change. Your absolute floor scenario may change. Reviewing your playbook keeps it current. 6. Confusing volatility with a real downturn. Markets move up and down constantly. A 3% drop in a week isn't a downturn. A 10% pullback is not a downturn. The triggers in your playbook are for sustained declines, not for daily volatility. If you treat every short-term market move as a trigger, you'll wear yourself out and could hurt your portfolio. Let's pull everything together. Your downturn playbook is a written document that outlines what to do if and when the market drops during your retirement. It has 4 trigger levels, each with a specific action. The first trigger means take no action. Your portfolio is built to observe it. The second trigger means to pause discretionary spending, the big trip waits, the renovation waits. The third trigger means tap your cash reserve. Your cash reserve should cover 12 to 24 months of essential spending built in advance and keep it in a separate account that does not move with the market. And your absolute floor means making a big lifestyle change, the kind you hope you'll never need. You get to choose the specific percentage for each trigger. Robert and Linda's finished playbook fits on 3 pages. 4 trigger levels with a specific percentage they chose. A cash reserve of 18 months sitting in a high-yield savings account. Both of their signatures, that's it. And that document is what lets them follow a plan rather than just react during a downturn. The whole exercise just takes one afternoon of focused thought. It costs nothing. And it could be what helps your retirement recover from a downturn instead of struggling to bounce back. 2 things to leave you with. First, if you want a clear picture of whether your retirement plan is ready for a downturn, take our free 7-minute retirement confidence assessment. The link is in the description below. Second, when you're ready to sit down and build your own playbook, the link to schedule a complimentary planning conversation is also there. We can walk you through the 4 trigger levels together, help you think through what fits your specific situation, and help you start building your cash reserve if you haven't already. Whether you reach out to us now or later, building your playbook is the foundation of your retirement plan. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.